Good afternoon. I hope everyone joining today's session is safe and healthy and are maintaining their well being with physical activity, meditation, and nutritious food and healthy eating. This brings me to our today's topic for the Masterclass 11 in the series of masterclasses for School of Health Sciences, University of Petroleum and Energy Studies. So today's topic is food and nutrition during COVID outbreak. And there's a famous quote of Hippocrates, let thy food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And this is really important at this time. We have with us today Miss Richa Mattu. She is nutrition and health leader and leads food and refreshment for South Asia for Unilever. She is a postgraduate in food and nutrition and is expert in field of nutritional R&D, consumer and health uh, marketing and communication. She is a regular speaker at industry events, conferences, and panel discussions. Welcome, Richa, and thank you for taking time out from your busy schedule to be with us today. I would also like to thank Mr. Rishikesh Bhakti from Indie Campus for introducing us to Ms. Mattu. Before going ahead, I would briefly like to introduce our university and School of Health Sciences. University of Petroleum and Energy Studies was established in 2003 with focus on specialized courses in engineering and business education. The focus initially was on energy sector, and later on we diversified into law, computer sciences, and design. School of Health Sciences was added into 2019, and School of Media is starting this year. In School of Health Sciences, we started with two programs last year, B Pharmacy and BSc Food Nutrition and Dietetics, and are adding 10 new programs this year, which include BTech Food Technology and MSc in Nutrition and Dietetics also. We endeavored to make these programs interesting and oriented towards industry requirements. And these programs have technology component, which are the new technologies coming into these sectors in next decade, like artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, predictive analytics, design thinking, etc. So School of Health Sciences is a diverse school. So we have pharmacy on one side, food and nutrition, clinical research, pharmaceutical chemistry, and healthcare and hospital management on the other side. So we thought that today's in reality of COVID-19, we should discuss how nutrition can play a very important role and can help in going over this crisis. So over to you, Richa, and I'll request you to make us aware about how nutrition can help in going over this crisis and still being healthy. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mahendru. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll just be sharing my screen for the presentation. Yeah. So if you could just wait for a minute. Yeah. So first of all, at the onset, I would like to thank the organizers for this masterclass. I believe the topic is pretty apt, which is food and nutrition during these times, unprecedented times of COVID. A lot of it, some of you must already be knowing, but specifically when it comes to COVID and more importantly, immunity, what recommendations have been given or what recommendations should be followed. I'll be briefly touching upon that. And towards the later part of the presentation, we'll be discussing more in terms of how this COVID scenario is going to change the future of jobs, career, and how is it that we can leverage this particular disruption and, kind of make it in our favor. Yeah. So just a brief statistics before we deep down into the science of nutrition. In terms of the cases, we all are aware, we are glued to our television sets and other social media. The cases seem to be rising. As of 5th of May, they were confirmed, cases close to 32,000, and the cases just seem to be rising. And hence, it is all the more important to maintain a healthy diet. The importance of maintaining a healthy diet is not only when a person is not well or during the time of COVID, but in general, because a healthy diet obviously leads to a healthy body, which gives a good fundamental, a good stepping stone for the person then to take on challenges further in life. And hence, when you look into good nutrition is important, like I said, even before, during, and after infection. Before infection, obviously, the more healthy the person is, the more stronger the person's immune system is. The person will be able to fight the infections better. During infection, obviously, nutrition in the form of micronutrients and all the other macronutrients helps the body fight infection. And after infection, again, in terms of recovering ourselves. Now, infection, if you know, takes a toll on the body. It, because of the various symptoms that the body has, as much as fever or cough or any other discomfort, the body needs to put in a lot of extra energy or a lot of extra effort to fight this in the form of our immune system, which is both innate as well as adaptive. Now, for our immune system to work, the body needs those extra nutrients and the extra energy. Now, maintaining a healthy diet is very important, like I said before, during these times of COVID. Now, while let's make it very clear that while there is no food or any dietary supplement that can prevent COVID infection, however, maintaining a healthy diet is as important because it helps support your immune system. Now, specifically, if you look at what the FAO has recommended in terms of maintaining a healthy diet, the first one being is that, especially, sorry, I think the slides moved. Yeah, especially if you look into the food group, one is supposed to consume a variety of food within each group and also across food group. So when I say within each group, what does that mean? So if you take one food group, which is the cereal or the pulses food group, you should have a variety within that. So if a person is rice eater, it's not essential that a person keeps eating rice all 3 meals a day. You should try and incorporate other cereals like broken wheat, whole wheat, oats, and things like that. Similarly, for pulses, while tur or arhar dal may be the one which is preferred or most commonly consumed in the households, but still when it comes to pulses, have a variety, which is what we mean by within each food group variety. And across food group, like you're aware, there are typically 5 food groups. The first one being cereal and millets, fruits and vegetables, meat and milk products, then your meat, fish, poultry, and your fats and oils. So try and have each of these in limited quantities throughout the day. The second one being is that consume a diet rich in whole grains, nuts, and healthy fats. Now, why whole grains? Whole grains could be in the form of whole cereals as well as whole pulses. Now, when you eat the grain as a whole, in which less of processing has happened and the bran is still intact, the person gets more micronutrients. Yeah. Therefore, it is important. Similarly, with nuts and healthy fats, the body is getting more of good fats, which is the MUFA and the PUFA, polyunsaturated fats, and in some cases, you will also get omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. Moving on, again, plenty of fruit and vegetables. That's something which is generally said. Fruits and vegetables are supposed to be protective. They give us a lot of vitamin and minerals, which in turn boost the immune system. Hence, the stress on having a lot of fruits and vegetables. Water. We sometimes tend to ignore water, but the fact remains that water is pretty essential, and one should have at least what they say, 2 to 2.2 liters of water. Again, it depends upon the body weight. The another thing being that, one should limit the consumption of salt, fat, and sugar. These things are typically considered to be nutrients to limit. They have an adverse effect when it comes to body weight as well as other conditions like hypertension, and hence it is said to limit. Yeah. And also limit the alcohol consumption. One does not say that do not have alcohol during these times, but definitely limit the consumption, because if one is going overboard, like what we recently saw during the huge queue that was set up once the government opened up, the fact is that when you're having alcohol, you will obviously cut down on either your whole grain consumption or your fruits and vegetable consumption, and hence it's recommended to have less of it. And the last bit being practice good food hygiene. So when it comes to food hygiene, obviously washing the fruits and vegetables properly, or washing the non-vegetarian items properly, not mixing the cooked and the uncooked material, ensuring, especially if you're having non-vegetarian items, that the product is thoroughly cooked and things like that, and typically avoid pest and other vector-borne insects that we have. And hence, moving on to the nutrition recommendations during the period of COVID-19 quarantine. So when I say COVID-19 quarantine, it doesn't mean a containment zone or a person who has been tested positive. Typically now, because of the lockdown situation, we all are in a quarantine period. And hence what happens, or if you look at the eating habit, there's a significant change that you can see in the eating habit. So what is happening? People across the countries, different countries, have been put in quarantine to avoid the spread of the virus, and also so the fact that it puts less, pressure and stress on our medical care. Now, because of this quarantine, what has happened? It is associated with interruption of your work routine. Earlier, you would get up, go to your offices, school, and have a set pattern. Yeah. Now that pattern has kind of been disrupted. While we are trying to follow it, but still it has resulted in boredom for a lot of us. Now, what does this boredom do? When we get bored, there is an inherent tendency to consume food specifically which are very high in fat, carbohydrate, or protein. Yeah. uh, okay, we want to have something deep fried today, we getting a sugar rush today or something like that. Yeah. Now ex- all this complete thing, plus the added stress that constantly we are subjected to in social media or in news, that so many cases rising, what's going to happen to economy and things like that, it's adding to the stress. Now this stress, further coupled with boredom, pushes people towards overeating and mostly looking for the sugary comfort of food craving. Now, this concept of food comfort or food craving is typically associated with carbohydrate rich diets. Yeah. Now, a carbohydrate craving and an unhealthy habit, like we know, could significantly impact the risk of obesity and other complications. In fact, a couple of reports also say that the more higher GI the food you have, it kind of satisfies the food craving, better. Therefore, person getting bored, person getting stressed, you tend to eat more. And at least I have not seen anybody eating fruits and vegetables or a healthy snack when a person is stressed or bored. You generally tend to eat more of unhealthy stuff, and hence this may then rise to obesity. Obesity, like is a significant factor or causative factor for all your other lifestyle diseases, whether it's hypertension, it could be CVDs and things like that, diabetes. And all these lifestyle diseases have an impact on COVID, in the sense that people suffering from lifestyle diseases are more prone of contacting this virus. Yeah. Hence, it is very important that when you overall look at your eating habits, do not let the boredom, do not let the stress affect you, and do not get on to the binge eating. And hence, when you look into this, what is the recommendations that have been given by WHO and other health authorities? Yeah. Now, also, what is known is that when you typically having a food, there are certain foods which are rich in certain components, yeah, and which help in production of certain neurochemicals, as what I can say. So, consuming food containing or promoting the synthesis of serotonin or melatonin at dinner is beneficial. So there are some kind of food like your banana, it could be your milk and milk products, almonds, cherries, oats. All these food typically contain melatonin or serotonin. Now this particular compound then again kind of has a soothing or a calming effect on you, and hence it is encouraged to have these kind of food. Yeah. And also these food also contain tryptophan, which is a type of an amino acid, which is again a precursor, which is that it leads to the production of serotonin and melatonin, which again is gonna, it's just the happy hormone. It's just gonna make you happy, and it's gonna help you break that clutter. Yeah. Further to add, the protein food such as milk and milk products are also the main sources of tryptophan, which also tends to induce sleep. Yeah, so a person feels more relaxed, more calm, and hence it is more helpful when the person is trying to sleep. Milk products, specifically like yogurt, also are supposed to enhance the production of NK cell activity, which is a type of an immune cell that we have in our body, and also help in reducing the risk of respiratory infection. This is basically based on the fact that your milk products like yogurt, if they have the live culture in it, that live culture is helpful in promoting NK cell activity, which is again helpful in fighting the infections that the body may be posed to. Now, along with the macronutrients that one is focusing on, which is the carb, fat, and protein, one should also be very mindful of the micronutrients that you are having. Yeah. So before we deep dive into micronutrients, I just thought that we'll quickly go over a recap into our immune system. Now, as you know, our immune system is of two types. It's innate and it's adaptive. Yeah. So innate is the immune system which kind of rapidly comes into action. So immediately when the body is subjected to a particular type of infection, it is the innate system which kind of tends to react. And over the whatever days or weeks, it is then the adaptive immunity which comes into action, and hence the adaptive immunity, if you see, is much more slower. Now, the innate system is the body's first or the natural line of defense. It's not going to differentiate between a virus or a bacteria or any dust particle and things like that. Yeah. In fact, the first barrier which comes to our protection is the skin. Yeah, the epithelial one. Then the second is again the lining of our internal organs. As simple as even the gastric juices that you find in our stomach, even they are kind of protective. Now, if the intruder, in this case, any microorganism escapes all this and still is about to reach, the body has an inflammation or an inflammatory response, because of which histamines are produced. Now, in release of that, what happens, the body then kind of unleashes all these different kind of immune cells that you're seeing, which is your macrophages, NK cell, dendritic cells, neutrophils, eosinophils, basionophils, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Now, all these cells are going to obviously attack the body, and they're going to help kind of prevent. In between also, what happens is that because the innate immunity is acting in the short period of time, within that period of time also, gradually your adaptive immunity will come into action. Yeah. Now, your adaptive or acquired immunity can differentiate between different pathogens. It is basically primarily consisting of your two types of cells, which is your T lymphocytes and your B lymphocytes. Yeah. Your B lymphocytes basically, kind of produce some chemicals which are called as your antibodies. They have they actually have a memory power. So if ever in the life stage you would have been attacked by a similar kind of a virus or a bacteria, these antibodies are going to help fight them. Whereas your T lymphocytes, they come into action when infection has already occurred. Yeah. Now, because all this is cell mediated response, maybe the body is not showing symptoms, but still these cells are working. And your two typical type of cells that you find is your helper T cells and the humoral T cells. So together, your innate and adaptive immunity helps you fight all these infections. We will move on to how the nutrients specifically help in this particular immune function. Now, of all the vitamin and minerals that are known, these are some specific vitamin and minerals that are helpful for immune function. If we deep down into vitamins, you have vitamin D. Yeah, so some of the sources, typically vitamin D, yes, is obtained from the sunlight, but you do have some Atlantic salmon and some kind of cheeses which do have vitamin D. But majority in Indian diets, it comes from food fortification. Then the other immunonutrient is vitamin C, largely present in your fresh fruits and vegetables. Vitamin A, again present in green and yellow colored fruits and vegetables, as well as milk and milk products. B12, again present typically in animal sources, could be your meat, fish, poultry, or milk. B9 or folic acid, as well as your B6. Now, these all vitamins are known to kind of support immune system. Along with the vitamins, we also have a lot of minerals like copper, zinc, iron, and selenium. Now, what is it that these vitamin and minerals do? The vitamin and minerals basically act as a catalyst in many of the biochemical reactions that we are having in our body, because of which it helps in production or in supporting the production of more, say, NK cells, T cells, and your other immune cells. Because now you have more number of cells in your body, these particular cells can fight the infection. Specifically, if you look into the mechanism of action, yeah, so these micronutrients have different sites of action when it comes to immune system. So the first one being the epithelial barrier, which could be your skin, which is the most extreme epithelial barrier, or your internal one. Now, nutrients like vitamin A, C, E, and zinc are helpful in maintaining this particular epithelial barrier, or the mucosal integrity, as they say. The second one being cellular immunity at basically at a cell level, as they say, and the various kind of immune cells that you just heard about in the previous slide. For those, you have your vitamin and minerals like vitamin A, B6, B12, C, D, folic acid, iron, zinc, copper, selenium, helping them. Now, specifically for the antibody for production, which is going to be helpful long term, we have separate set of vitamins and minerals helping, which is vitamin A, B6, B12, D, E, folic acid or vitamin B9, zinc, copper, and selenium. So all these micronutrients that you saw, they needed in very less amount, very less quantity, primarily, yes, contributed by your fruits and vegetables and also your whole grains pulses to some extent. And together, along with your epithelial barrier, either coming in force with your cellular immunity or antibody production, will help strengthen the immune system, and hence will help you fight the infection better. We've seen many cases that, nowadays the number of cases of the asymptomatic cases are increasing. So probably there are many people who may have got the virus, but still they have not shown signs and symptoms. One of the reasons could be that, the body is fighting the infection, and maybe, yes, their initial immune system is probably healthy enough to fight this infection. Hence, in summary, if I can summarize a few key points, is that there is no specific fruit and vegetable or any other fruit that you can eat, or food, sorry, that you can eat to increase your resistance. Yeah. The main tip being that eat variety of diet, and benefit from all the nutrients, specifically your vitamin C, D, E, beta carotenes, which is basically a precursor of vitamin A, which is going to help your immune system. Follow a healthy plate model or a balanced diet. A healthy plate model typically says that when you sit to eat a food, just have a look at your plate. In your plate, at least half of the food should be half of the plate, sorry, should be covered with fruits and vegetables, and in the remaining half, then probably one fourth should be cereals, and the other one fourth should be a protein source. Now, along with the initial micronutrients, which is A, D, E, and beta carotene, enhancing immunity immunity enhancing vitamin B12, along with folate or B9 and B6, is also very essential because it helps in creating new immune cells. Selenium and zinc also helps maintains body's natural defense system. In fact, I realize there's a lot of discussion happening on zinc these days with President Trump, claiming a lot on because there's been science in which they say that zinc inhibits RNA transcription and translation, because of which it may be helpful in fighting the virus. However, clinical studies are still awaiting. And as we speak, there are a lot of clinical trials which are undergoing with different combination of different micronutrients, combination of micronutrients and drug, to see that specifically if we can protect or if we can enhance the immune system of our frontline workers. Lastly, there is a connection between a healthy bowel system and immune system, and therefore it is very essential to have a fiber-rich diet, and more importantly, even your prebiotics and your probiotics. Yeah. So these particular slides covered in general what a healthy diet or a nutritious diet is going to help you with, or how it's going to help you with fight the infection, which is basically by supporting and boosting your immune cells. Later part now, let's basically focus on how does all of this, impact the future of jobs and careers, specifically when it comes to food and nutrition. Yeah. Obviously it's not easy, and what I thought was that I just kind of put in some broad themes over here. So every crisis accelerates the speed of innovation. Yeah, expect innovation even in the food industry, and R&D is going to take the center stage. Yeah, over the last 1.5 years, 1.5 months, I have seen myself so many products come into the market, or the fact that existing products telling the story in a different form, whether it is haldi added to a certain product claiming that, or even a probiotic drink, or a healthy snack which has good protein and then claiming protein is helpful in immunity, and so on and so forth. So because of the current crisis situation, what has happened is that R&D has generally taken a center stage, and the pressure and impact of creating new products, catering to the market, and accelerating the speed of innovation. Because if this is the need of the hour, how is it that the food industry can cater to it? The second being, immunity is going to dominate the new product development decisions. So earlier, probably immunity would have been one of the focus areas, but now because of the unprecedented situations we are in, I think it's definitely going to come on the top. So if you go and meet 10 consumers and ask them what kind of a product they want, I'm sure they'll come back and say, something which helps me not fall sick, or my child shouldn't fall sick, should attend school in a normal situation, and all that. And hence a lot of product development, maybe even a lot of startups may come up, catering to this particular space of immunity. Moving on, I think we'll also see a lot of surge in interest in plant-based nutrition, because as you're aware that the virus basically spread, or is believed to jump from animals to human through the food chain. Yeah, and hence a lot of focus on plant-based diet. anyways, the plant-based diet and the vegan trend was there, and I think with this it is just gonna catch up, because as the latest science says that a well-planned vegan diet can also provide all the essential amino acids, and hence we may see a lot of consumers jumping on to the vegan or to the plant-based nutrition, and hence a lot of innovation in that particular space, a lot of new products we can see in that particular space. And further increase focus on geriatric or elderly, as the senior citizens have been hardest. So a lot of advisories that the fact that senior citizens or geriatric population is prone to this virus, obviously, because if you see the general physiology, a geriatric person would not be that healthy, or generally the rate of catabolism is higher than anabolism. Muscle sarcopenia is anyways on the high, and therefore the person anyways needs a lot of nutrition focus. Yeah, in this particular situation, there are easy chances that the person may miss on some of the micronutrients, and while the person may look healthy, the person may have some micronutrient deficiency, and hence focusing on them even more. So the market may see some products now not only focusing on children but also on the geriatric population. Local nutrition focus will also tend to increase, and we may see the emergence of some local brands and company. Also, because of the COVID situation, what has happened is that the global economy obviously is facing some tough time. There is a restriction in a lot of supply or procurement of a lot of raw materials. So earlier, if a person was or a company was freely able to procure a raw material for its produce, say from a Europe or from any other country in Southeast Asia, that's obviously going to come now with a little bit of caution, and everybody is going to think, hence how is it that locally the raw materials can be produced so that we have the finished good. That's going to be focused on. And I believe the consumer dependence on the local brands and local companies may also go up. We may see that now, because dining out has come down significantly. Even if the lockdown is open, I'm not sure how many of the consumers would be willing to dine out at the same rate as what they were doing earlier. Therefore, it could be likely that this increased interest, which has anyways been generated, is sustained, which is do-it-yourself food trends and recipes. So earlier, I would actually go out to have a Chinese, but now can I just get a Chinese sauce or a Chinese masala at home and make the dish myself? Similarly, for an Italian dish and things like that. So again, food innovation in the area of mixes, gravies, pre-prep food, wherein the consumer is cooking the own food, but definitely to get that a restaurant like taste, and to get that feeling that they're having a food outside. A part of the ingredient could be brought in from outside, which would then supplement in these do-it-yourself food trends and recipes. And the last one being sustainability is going to be in the entire food production value chain. Yeah, it's going to be dominant a lot, and a lot of jobs are going to get created around the sustainability theme. Now, sustainability as a concept, I believe is slightly difficult concept when it comes to a layman and a common consumer. Yeah, and if I say that this tomato is sustainably sourced, it does not mean that this tomato is organic. Yeah, there's a difference between sustainability and organic. So when we say sustainability, it means that you have taken care of the environment, you've taken care of the person working, you have taken care of the surroundings. So it's a larger concept, and hence with the current situation wherein we've seen so many people suffering, I think that human element is going to probably come back. And hence there are a lot of courses, there are a lot of study materials specifically on sustainability, how is it that we can incorporate that particular element into our current work and into our current jobs is again going to be into focus a lot. Yeah. And lastly, in terms of how do we think we can, leverage these emerging trends and disruption? Specialization is definitely going to be a key. So pick up an emerging trend and acquire deep domain expertise in it. So it's no longer the age that you're going to have a general education of say a general science, if I can just generalize it for the time being. You need to pick up one particular thing. Is it that you're going to focus on protein and you're going to deep dive and understand that better, or is it that you're going to focus on sustainability? Nowadays there are even sustainable homes which have come up. So what is that one particular expertise which is going to set you apart from all others? So a general knowledge in terms of a general base of science will be helpful, but over and above, what is the specialization is something that's going to be crucial now. Then again, keep yourself abreast about the latest trends, yeah, through available literature. The speed at which we see things changing, it's never been like that. Today you read something and tomorrow you get to know that, okay, it's again become outdated and something new has come in. This is the world of AI. Information is at your fingertips, so try and keep yourself abreast. Follow some certain I don't know, news feeds if you have, or wherever your interest is in. Follow those particular channels, news feeds, and scientists, and keep yourself updated with what's happening. Keep a strong technology focus, yeah, as technology is gonna be a even bigger enabler going forward, with lesser and lesser human interactions probably. Work is definitely not going to stop. Yeah. So how is it that you will enable that? And hence technology is going to come in. Like I said, AI is going to be big time. So earlier one would have we would go to a doctors, if I take an example. Now it's all happening via video conferences. Similarly, marketing, it is now going to move into a telemarketing kind of a system. And hence keep an eye on that technology, and just see how is it that it's going to span out, and how is it that you can contribute, or how well, I think over here it's also how well you can adapt that technology and run with it. And lastly, this pandemic has brought a bigger focus on food and health. And as professionals from the industry, we need to gear up for the challenge. Obviously, because your discretionary spends are going to go down, drastically, or it probably has go down. People are no longer spending, obviously, in cinema halls. They are anyways closed. Even when they open up, I'm not sure how many would feel comfortable going, or how many would now like to, go and spend on clothes and apparels and things like that. But there are certain basic needs that people will focus. And luckily, one of that focus is going to be food, and hence the focus is going to be on nutrition. Hence I guess this is a pretty good time for us as professionals to gear up for the challenge, and take it up on yourself, be ready for the challenge. And yeah, all the best to you all. So that is all that I had. Over to you, Dr. Mahendru.
Thank you, Richa. And you covered a lot of things, right from the nutrition to how it impacts the immunity, and what is the mechanism behind how nutrients enhance the immunity. And then you touched upon how this sector is going to be impacted. What are the foods we should be eating? What are the job trends which are going to come in? And how technology is going to impact that. And I would say that in our School of Health Sciences, we are trying to include these new technology trends into our curriculum. And I would also like to mention that despite the lockdown over last more than 1.5 months now, we have been quite regular in conducting our classes using technology platforms. So we have just in School of Health Sciences delivered more than 200 classes. Plus we are doing these master classes where we are bringing in experts to talk to our students as well as to people in general. So now moving on to the question answer session. And I have some questions, plus we have a lot of questions coming in from the viewers. So COVID-19 is one of the big crises the world has faced till now, and especially during last 1.5 century, maybe this is one of the biggest crises. And as you also mentioned, we have seen that people with strong immunity are able to tide over the infection and are also less vulnerable in getting the infection. So in this situation, how important is nutritional intervention to help recovery of the patients infected with COVID-19? And I'll also related question to this, although you touched upon that during your talk, that most of the deaths are being seen in the aged group. If you see the age group above 60, that is one section which is getting the highest number of deaths. So how important is nutrition for healthy aging?
So on the first question, which is on nutrition recovery, so I think that's very important, and good nutrition is critical for recovery. So not only during COVID situation, even generally. So if I take kids as an example, the concept of growth faltering is very common in kids, which is basically kids tend to fall prey to infections very easily, whether it's diarrhea or whether it's influenza. The moment they do that, the body has to put in an enormous amount of effort kind of to sustain the basic activities, to sustain the BMR, and then things like that. And hence the amount of energy that the body needs, or the protein that the body needs for growth, is kind of it's not left, because obviously the body is just trying to fight the infections, and hence growth suffers. And hence we see this concept of growth faltering, wherein the child falls down in terms of their growth percentile for height or for weight. Yeah. Similarly is the concept for any particular individual. While in case of individual, growth may not be happening, but whatever we are eating, it primarily goes in maintenance of our body, which is our BMR and our physical activities. Now, whenever a person gets infection with COVID or any other kind of viral or bacterial infection, the body has to put in a lot of effort to fight these, in the form of our immune system. And hence there is an extra need of protein. There will be an extra need of micronutrients which will be needed. Now, the sooner we can provide, the recovery will be better. Or basically, it's also in terms of what's the baseline status. If the person's baseline status is good, obviously when the person is entering into an infection zone, the person already has a body reserve to fight it. However, if a person is already malnourished, is already at a borderline, and then has got an infection, the body is already, taken a beating, and then kind of to supplement becomes even more critical. And hence, nutrition recovery is a lot dependent on what kind of infection the person has had, and obviously how soon we can provide that particular nutrition. Coming on to the second question, which was in terms of people suffering from lifestyle diseases and people above the age of 60. Now, it is typically seen in a geriatric population, the tendency to eat generally tends to go down. Satiety goes down. There are a lot of changes that happen in the body. For many people, the gums are not strong, or the teeth have fallen. Eyesight may not be there, smell, vision, everything gets impacted, because of which the person does not feel like eating that much. Yeah, metabolism and the digestion of food, the thermogenic effect of food is also lesser, because of which what happens is that when an old person is not eating enough, obviously the person is not getting enough energy. The person is already in a negative calorie. Because of this situation, and also also because what we've generally seen is that the protein consumption also may go down. The body is basically in a negative state, and hence muscle sarcopenia starts happening, which is body starts to break down its protein source, and one of the readily available form of source would be muscles. It breaks it down to provide the essential amino acids to sustain life critical biochemical functions. Now when this starts happening, the person is already very weak, the person is already very frail. Now in these situations like a COVID or any kind of a viral or a bacterial impact, what is seen is that specifically if the person has protein energy malnutrition, or if the person is elderly old with lesser nutrition, and hence a lesser protein, circulating amino acid levels are lesser in the body, what happens is that enough production of immune cells do not happen, or the fact that your immune cells typically, if they will have a lifespan say of a few days or a few months, that gets drastically reduced, which then renewed production may not happen, or it may happen at a compromised rate, because the body does not have micronutrients, the body does not have protein, which then starts taking a toll, and hence you see all these repercussions, like the person easily falling prey to all these infections.
So now this brings to a related question. So is COVID-19 leading to a nutritional crisis, especially with a lot of people below poverty line in India? And there are a lot of questions coming regarding this also. The food going from public distribution system, and it's maybe deficient in vitamins. There are no fruits, no green vegetables. So how is it going to impact people? So now the nutritional levels are and the essential nutrients are not coming in.
Yes. So I think that this situation is definitely going to impact, because first of all, there is not a free supply of food as what there used to be. While things are now coming back to normal, and right from day one, the government has also been helping in providing all the essential commodities. But if you look at people who were living below the poverty line, they were earning on a daily basis, yeah, and hence from that earnings they were able to buy some food. Now because that stopped, obviously the choices or the variety of food that they could buy, I'm sure that would have come down. Going forward, if you typically see how our food system is based and how our agricultural system is based, we give a lot of subsidy on carb based food. So in India we have subsidy on rice, we have subsidy on wheat. Ultimately all these carb based food will not provide you that good quality of protein. And obviously all said and done, fruits and vegetables are expensive, they are also perishable. Now if a consumer, if a normal layman in these situations is not focusing on protein and protein elements which are primarily coming from milk, egg, non-vegetarian or pulses, and fruits and vegetables, obviously that hidden hunger may come in, yeah, so micronutrient deficiencies may come in, and overall immunity definitely will get impacted, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next one. So you mentioned about change in dining habits. People are not able to go out now, and they might be cooking uh, at their homes itself. So how is it that impacting the, say, these food businesses, and how would it impact the job prospects and say people not ordering food from outside, instead they are making it at home? So in terms of students who are say studying in food technology business or in these restaurants or carry out um, uh, food outlets, how and how long that is going to be impacted?
So I personally think that, I think this is a time wherein your processed food or your packaged food is going to, kind of come up, or people are going to rely on it more. Because if you see, generally people fear that, the virus may get transmitted from a human, obviously contamination and things like that. food ultimately, definitely, yes, has to be cooked by a person. And when it comes to, therefore, takeaways, I doubt it'll still take a lot of time to kind of, people to get back to that confidence that yes, I can easily go and street and eat at a roadside vendor or order food. But like I was saying, food processing, and that is where the students come in, yeah, wherein yes, we have various technology available, whereas we have various machines available, wherein state of the art technology is used, minimal human handling is there. We have our strict quality and hygiene processes like HACCP and everything else there, which will automatically mitigate all these concerns. Once I know that the particular food, so what if it is packaged, so what if it is processed, it is definitely ensuring me that it has the hygiene of the highest order. That is going to give me confidence, and hence probably I'm going to start from that particular thing, start using it in my daily cuisine, try inventing my own recipes. So in fact, I was recently reading, during this lockdown periods, the maximum number of searches on the internet have actually been on recipes. Yeah. So people do want to cook, and where is it that our students come in the picture is that, okay, you people also, while they want to cook, they do not have the required culinary skills to cook. Yeah, therefore, what can you give them as a base which will help them, enhance, or which will help them reduce the time, or give them the same taste that they want in their favorite restaurant? So that is where food processing, food packaging, I think, is going to definitely come up.
So related to this, so related to cooking yourself, and so these days there is a lot of discussion on how to ensure that the fruits and vegetables you are buying from outside, they are safe enough to consume. So well, people are using a lot of different methods to ensure that. So maybe your take on that and how to ensure that we do not bring in the infection with this fruits and vegetables into our kitchen.
So typically what is said that if proper food hygiene is maintained, we will not get an infection, because if you see, the infection primarily came in via animal. So it came in from the wet market. It did not come in from a typical, sabzi mandi that we have in India or what we'll have in other countries. Yeah, because the virus or bacteria obviously are there on dead animals, and from there it kind of came in. While there are a lot of info, roaming around on social media, the best thing is that yes, if you're getting fruits and vegetables, the first thing is that we should try and wash it very thoroughly so that there is no visible, sorry, scum. So remove the dirt, remove the dust that you have, properly by running it under hot water or your fresh water, and that's it. Just keep it. Then when you are cooking, that is where your hygiene comes in. Properly peel the vegetable if the vegetable is supposed to be peeled. Do not mix up the peeled vegetable and the cut vegetable. Yeah. And also when you are cooking, cook it properly. Many of the organizations are saying that, while they're saying that COVID is not spreading from food, but still, if you think, or if you are kind of little bit avoid eating raw fruits and raw vegetables, especially fruits anyways have to be eaten raw. So probably just either blanch the vegetable and have it, pressure cook the vegetable and have it, cook it and have it. For fruits, luckily what is there is that right now, again, if you're too much scared, try and opt for those fruits wherein you have to remove the skin or the peel. Yeah. Even if you're having apple, for the time being, remove the peel. Banana is anyways as such. So what's that's going to ensure is that even if by the minutest chance, if you have certain bacterial spores or something on the outside of the skin, you're basically eliminating it. But over and above that, I'm not sure how the thing can be foolproof. It's just that, yeah, maintain hygiene, and that should be good enough.
And you were mentioning about processed foods. So that is going to be a big component. So we have a question on, of course, they would have very high hygiene level and they are being processed in automated plants. But then the question is about their nutritional quality. And there are a lot of preservatives in them, a lot of salt, a lot of sugar. Flavors are being added, them synthetic, other additives. So how would that impact the quality of the food and the nutrition that a person is consuming? And
Yeah.
wouldn't be the home cooked food better than the
So at
preserved food?
these times, I agree, home cooked food is better. Yeah. And if you can have home cooked food, definitely go ahead with that. Yeah. But there are times wherein it is better that you have a canned or a frozen vegetable rather than not having a vegetable at all. Yeah. So it is basically that. When it comes to processed and packed foods, there are also a lot of myths around it. So first of all, food preservation and processing many a times improves the nutritional quality of the food. It removes the anti-nutritional factors. Micronutrients, definitely, depending upon what food it is and what thermal processing is being given, could get. But again, then look out for foods which are fortified. Yeah. In terms of food fortification, it will not impact the taste of the food, plus it will give you the required micronutrients. The another, yes, tricky question is on flavors and additives and things like that. Now, if you are expecting a food to survive, it will have, in many cases, it will have some preservatives, unless and until you have more expensive technology put in, like what you typically see in a Tetra Pak kind of a situation, wherein the need of preservative is not there, or wherein you have dry products. Yeah. Wherein again need of preservatives is not there. When our mothers or grandparents used to dry chilies and make chili powder or papads, they never needed to add preservatives. Yeah, that's because as a technique, drying does not need preservatives. So when you're buying, wear on your professional hats, think that whether this food, will it require preservative or not. There are many processed foods which do not have any preservatives. Flavors and colors, yes, again, I suggest read the back of pack very carefully. Now you have a lot of products which are on clean label. They do not have any e numbers, so you can opt for that. But even if a product has, all of them are at GMP. All the levels basically which are used are at a good manufacturing practices. All the ingredients are approved by international organizations like your Codex Alimentarius and all. So from a safety perspective, I do not think there is a concern. But definitely, if you feel limited, salt, sugar, fat is a concern, and hence, again, what I would recommend is that read the back of the pack. Yeah, read that for a per serve or a per 100 gram, depending upon what the food product is, how much of fat, sugar, and salt are being given. Now, many manufacturers even declare percentage GDA, which is the percentage guideline daily amount. So you will come to know when you are having a bowl of ice cream, you are getting 110 kcal. You're having 250 kcal. Yeah. Depending upon that, make your choices. Do you want to indulge today and have a 250 kcal ice cream, which is high in sugar or fat? Or today you feel like, controlling yet indulging and you want to have a 110 kcal. So I guess education is the key over here. Read the label, make informed choices, and there are a lot of products that you can choose from.
Thank you. So there's a question regarding whether UPS is planning to open R&D on biotechnology and its program. So we are starting food tech, BTech program this year, and BSc and MSc programs in microbiology also from coming session. Of course, biotechnology would be one of the future expansion programs for the UPS School of Health Sciences. And so, Richard, there's another question regarding nutraceuticals, how important they are, and can they play an important role, especially seeing the history of India in terms of Ayurveda, Siddha, and other systems of medicine, especially in terms of COVID-19.
So nutraceutical space is surely catching up, and I think it's been catching up long time before even COVID. The only thing about nutraceutical, or more importantly about your Ayurveda, is that I think even from a government perspective, we've not had a sustained focus on research and development, yeah, because of which we've not been able to sustain many of the activities. However, having said that, I now see a lot of other countries focusing on Ayurveda, on other allied medicine. The scope will definitely come up, because the concept of Ayurveda is definitely based on energy, and a lot of things are something that can be done at home, and how you kind of have your plate. So some very basic things like effect of ginger, garlic, turmeric, and things like that. Helpful, but when it comes to authorities like WHO, they have yet not kind of recommended it. But at a personal level, one can surely consume it. Watch out again for this space for more research. If there are more and more, again from a student perspective and a career perspective, if there are more and more research papers which are there in this area, it's just going to strengthen, yeah. So your European Food Safety Organization just doesn't say that vitamin A is helpful. It was able to say that vitamin A is helpful, or it is helpful in boosting immunity based on the various papers that were submitted. Similarly, if we as a student fraternity, as professionals, feel, do research, and then say that yes, it is there in a peer reviewed journal, there is a merit, I'm sure it'll catch up. It's just that right now probably the visibility is not there, or enough researches in the form of human clinical trials are not there. That person is still not able to say that convincingly as what we are able to say for the modern medicine.
So now coming to the last question, we are already over time. So, and this is a very important one, and our viewer is asking that fortification as an entrepreneurial idea, how good is it for Indian conditions? Like, would entrepreneurs bringing out food products which are fortified, would that be good entrepreneurial idea in India?
Well, that'll definitely be an idea. And now you will get a lot of support even from FSSAI, which is a Food Safety Standard Authority of India. So I think even at a government level, the Ministry of Health realized that Indians, we have a lot of hidden hunger. So while somebody may be obese or somebody may be healthy, a person may still be anemic, a person may still be vitamin D deficient, because of which what the food authorities have done is that in fact they have mandated the addition of certain micronutrients in certain food commodities. Like the classic example is iodine in salt, yeah. Similarly, they're going ahead with iron and folic acid in wheat flour. So if you are a food manufacturer and if you want to specifically sell in PDS, which is a public distribution system, by law you have to fortify the product, yeah, which is wheat, oil, salt. So there are some of the commodity items that the government has set, yeah. And if you are catering to that section of the society, you will again have to fortify it. When it comes to other MNCs, again, I think they are absolutely open, because the kind of stories that they can tell when the product is fortified improves. And now even the consumers are trying to know the benefits of fortification. Whatever losses that have happened during processing, and add back can be done, yeah. And hence I guess it's a win-win situation, both from a manufacturer and a consumer perspective. And the fact is fortification does not cost a lot. So that's a myth. If somebody says that adding micronutrient cost, it will hardly increase the cost of the food product by some paisa at the manufacturer's level, yeah. Therefore, yeah, a great opportunity and one of the cheapest and easiest way to remove hidden hunger from our country.
Thank you, Richa, for a very lively session and for answering all these questions. I would also like to thank all the participants for joining us. So continuing in this series, tomorrow we all have another talk at 4 p.m. That is on the basics of patents, and we'll have Dr. Sheetal Guleria from Clarivet Analytics joining us to talk on this topic. Thank you, Richa, again. And thank you for accepting our invitation and for this very interesting talk and discussion.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mahendru. Thank you all. Have a good day. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, stay home. Thank you for joining the session.